one part of Britain, a burial costs under £2,000. In another part of the same country, the same burial costs almost £7,000. Nobody chooses which price they get. A funeral feels like one bill. It's actually 3 different systems, stacked on top of each other. The funeral director, whose prices you can now see by law before you agree to anything. The council, whose fee for the cremation or the burial itself is fixed long before anyone asks. And the prepaid plan industry, which sold peace of mind for decades with no financial regulator behind it. 3 systems, 1 bill, and almost nobody is told where one ends and the next begins. In the latest national figures, a simple funeral in Britain averages £3,828. With the flowers, the cars, the order of service many families add, the average spend is £5,140. The cost of a funeral has risen by 1/3 since 2019. Nobody gets a quiet afternoon to think any of this through. A deposit is often due before the funeral can take place, so the decisions get made in days, by people who haven't slept, in the worst week of their year. Start with the part that has actually changed for the better. Until recently, you couldn't easily compare what one funeral director charged against another. There was no requirement to show you a full price before you sat down and agreed to something. In 2021, after an investigation by the competition regulator, that changed. Every funeral director and every crematorium now has to publish a standardized price list, in branch and online. They're banned from paying hospitals, hospices, or care homes to steer families their way. And in each of the regulator's first 2 annual checks since, prices from the larger funeral director chains rose slower than inflation, which suggests something simple. When people can see prices, prices behave. It isn't perfect. At the start of 2024, the regulator found around 250 funeral directors still weren't displaying the prices the law requires. Nearly 3 years after the rule came in. Not evidence the system is broken, evidence that this protection is younger and more fragile than most people assume. But for the first time, part of the price is something you can see and compare before you agree to it. Now go back to that first number, the one that changes by almost £5,000 depending on your postcode. In Westmoreland and Furness, in Cumbria, a cremation with a service costs £960. A new grave for a local resident, with the burial itself, comes to £1,914. In Lambeth, in South London, a cremation costs £1,060. A new grave for a local resident comes to £6,703. Same country, same year, around 3.5 times the price. The difference isn't care or compassion or a better goodbye. It's land and location. This isn't a scandal. Cremation and burial fees are set by whoever runs the crematorium or the cemetery. Very often, that's the local council. Each one sets its own fees, on its own schedule. Land really is more expensive in London. Council budgets really are stretched almost everywhere. But none of that is something a grieving family chose. And in the week that matters, there's no practical way to shop around for a different council's price. The fee follows the ground. The ground is where it is. So part of the bill is a competitive service, and you're now allowed to compare it. The other part is a fixed local fee, with no comparison to make. One of these you can do something about, the other simply happens to you. There are 2 things that were supposed to soften all of this. Neither of them fully has. Direct cremation, no service, no mourners, has grown from 3% of funerals in 2019 to 21% in 2025. It averages £1,628, but 86% of the families who choose it still hold a memorial of their own afterwards. Counting that, their total spend on the goodbye averages closer to £2,949. It lowers the bill. It doesn't remove the need to say goodbye in front of the people who loved the same person. Then there are prepaid funeral plans. Pay today's price, years in advance, and lift the weight off your family later. That was the promise. But the industry selling that promise had no financial regulator behind it until the 29th of July, 2022. One provider, Safe Hands, collapsed into administration in March that year, months before the new protections came into force. Around 46,000 people had paid into plans with that one company. Money set aside years in advance, specifically to spare their families this exact week. Planning ahead was the responsible choice. For those 46,000 people, it wasn't a protected one. So what happens when a family can't absorb any of this at all? In England and Wales, there's a funeral expenses payment, but only if the family is already on a qualifying benefit. It covers the burial or cremation fee, plus up to £1,000 towards everything else. Set against a £5,000 average, that gap speaks for itself. The government's own guidance admits, in its own words, that the payment will not usually cover all of the costs of the funeral. Scotland built something different. For families who qualify, its funeral support payment covers reasonable burial and cremation fees, rather than folding them into one fixed cap. Plus a flat rate this year of £1,327.75 towards everything else, more than the English cap for the same kind of loss. That difference isn't an accident of economics, it's a decision somebody made, which means the English and Welsh cap is a decision too. Not a law of nature, just where the line has been drawn so far. It could be drawn somewhere else. And underneath all of this sits one more fact, quietly. If nobody can pay at all, the council where a person died has a legal duty to arrange a funeral anyway. In a single recent year, English councils arranged more than 4,000 of them, some for people with no family left to find, some for families who simply couldn't pay. The number is rising. That isn't the story of this episode. It's just the flaw underneath everything else in it. None of this is about a family that planned badly. The bill feels arbitrary because, in places, it genuinely is. One part of it only became transparent in 2021. Another part is a fixed local fee that was never built to be compared. A third part, the one meant to help you plan ahead, wasn't brought under a financial regulator until 2022. Knowing that doesn't make anyone's bill smaller. It changes what the bill means, not proof that you got something wrong. Proof that you are dealing with 3 different systems at once in the worst week of the year, with almost none of it explained to you in advance. If you're facing this, there's one thing worth knowing before you sign anything. Funeral directors are now legally required to publish a standardized price list on display in the branch and on their website. Not a verbal estimate. They're standard prices in writing before you agree to a single item. Ask to see it. Take it away, sit with it, and put it next to another funeral director's list. In that quiet room with the tissues and the folder of coffins, it doesn't feel like a place where you're allowed to compare prices. You are. Most people never think to ask. If this helped, you can subscribe for more calm explanations like this one.